Thank you for joining us. This is Brave New History. We are back with Gnostic Quran, doing the second part of the Quran translation, where we're doing a fresh translation without, what do we want to say, theological aims to it. Just try to honestly interpret it.
Theological interference, where sometimes you just simply abandon the literal text, or else it's not a good way to do your work with ancient texts. But but sometimes, even when it comes to the Quranic text itself, it's problematic in a sense that many words which occurs there just simply occurs once, and often these loan words are unfortunately doesn't have any counterparts in other Semitic languages, and you often simply rely on the later sources because it's basically the only thing we have. And I will try to share the screen so we continue from the previous from where we stopped previously. Okay, I hope it's working. Yep.
And there we are. Look at that. It's screen. Oh shoot! What's the movie? What's the movie? Leonardo DiCaprio in a dream, in a dream, in a dream. Inception. Inception. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's close this one. And this is actually the Amharic keyboard. Such a wonderful language, but it has so many letters in its alphabet, because as you can see, the different vowels are already somehow inserted within the letter forms.
Mm-hmm.
So for the certain sounds, there's a different letter pattern, as you can see. And it's like a table. It's really a pain in one place to search throughout the Ge'ez Bible, because I use it too in my translation. But let's close it for now for a minute, because I need to prepare the Quran.com comparison. And we stopped at verse 15, as far as I know. Unfortunately, I still don't have any commentaries, but I can recall it from my mind what I found in the translation. And I personally translated previously as the evil ones. So we discussed the sharar, but what I find out that in actually Manichaean and Middle Persian, sarar meaning the ruler, and even in the Hebrew itself, the same form for this specific word sharar can also used for the ruler, and most probably this particular word sharar, enemy, is Semitic in origin, whilst the sarar is probably coming from Persian for both Hebrew and Arabic in that case, at least from my perspective. And why is that? Because why suddenly the rulers are discussed? And I think the problem appears especially with all this description of the heavenly pleasures which the believers would experience in the heaven. I think there's just simply mistranslation, because in some parts actually in the Quran there is similar descriptions as we have it here in this particular surah of heavenly pleasures, but they actually criticized in the Quran in a way that this is the only enjoyment of this world, hayato dunya. And I'm not saying that when the words are used identically, it's necessarily mean the same context, but I think that's the case because you can easily read it other ways, at least in that passage. So usually it's taking all the next descriptions we have as the descriptions of paradise for the third types of people, for the sabikun, who are among the most pleasant gardens. But you can take the next verses as like some sort of distinctive narrative, which describes that ones, the rulers, twisted rulers. In that case, even though like I'm very skeptical about this particular word because it's hardly derivable from the Hebrew tene, and in the Quran particularly it's used, as far as I know, only once. Yeah, it's hapax legamenon, so it's only once used in the Quran, and when the word occurs only once, that's always a problem because it can easily be misinterpreted for the theological reasons. And when it comes to the second part of the translation, it's quite evident that the Sunni theologians try to mitigate the notion of the reincarnation in the Quran. It was important because it was distinctive part of the Sunni orthodoxy to reject the notion of the reincarnation. It wasn't so for the early Shia movements. But yeah, mutakina alayha mutaqabbilin, and mutakina probably refers to having supper, to sitting. I personally see it as a comparison to the Hebrew taka, and if only I have it. I just want. I remember I just have had the link to it. Yeah, it's here. And what is problematic too, because even in Hebrew Bible, this word too, like this particular root form, appears only once in Deuteronomy. So, and hence there's a different translations we have. In KJV, it's like they sit down. In like the more recent versions, recent translations, the follow. So, but overall, in the Quran, like the primary meaning would be to recline on, to sit on. But when it comes in the participle form, it's used for the supper. And I will try to find. Yeah. I will try to find it in the Corpus Quran, because in order to prove it, 56:16. Let's see how they render it. Here's mutakina, and we will see how this particular root is used throughout the corpus. To lean, to recline. But as you can see, in passive participle form, suddenly it means the banquet, which and this is in the story of the Joseph, Suratul Yusuf, where this woman which Joseph was presented to were preparing the banquet, and like it would be a problem to translate here this particular word differently rather than banquet. So you can. It's not a problem here to translate it as a supper, some sort of some sort of a banquet, and this is actually what be this description of what the rulers do in this kind of a earthly life. It would be criticizing the rulers, which is not like unfrequent theme with the Quran itself, who are having supper facing each other, mutaqabilin, and this is from the Kabbalah, and the Muslim direction of prayer, right? The Qibla is also derived from the same root, even though in more like modernistic, I would say, translation we have today, like Quran only, they do not take it much more literally, because even throughout the Quran there is occurrences of this particular root in a figurative passion. This is not like a direction in a literal sense, but your somewhat goal in your life, which you're directed to. It could also be Qibla, which is very fascinating. What I found one day, that even in this kind of Manichaean prayer, they have this idea, and even the modern Zoroastrianism, Verdini religion, as they call it, they have the idea of the Qibla towards the sun and moon, and Quran actually is very critical about this particular prayer, and I think in one form it's used La yasjudu ila al-qamar wa shams in the Quran. Do not basically bow down towards the sun and moon. It's one of the verse in the Quran, and I think that's some sort of a critique of Manichaean prayer, and undoubtedly that one of the audience of the Quran would be Manichaeans. Religions like that, they do not disappear suddenly without any traces, and you need to understand that de facto Manichaeanism was somehow the first world religion in a sense, before the Christianity, if we are not counting the Buddhism and Mithraism, of course. And this Qibla concept was important for the early Manichaean community too. But here it is in the tafa'alu form, tafa'alu pattern of the root word. So it means the causative meaning. So it's not just facing, but facing each other in that sense. يطوف عليهما ولدان مخلدون. This particular root is often taken as and circumambulate them, eternal boys. That's very controversial, I would say, like traditional translation, oftenly taken as a controversial one. Let's see how like traditionals translated. They will be weighted on by eternal use. That's interesting. It's very rare phenomena where you will see something like that. But I think what we need to do, we need to take journey to another beautiful website called Islam Awakened, which displays the different tafsirs we have in English translations of the Quran. And you can see circulating among them will be youthful beings, and this is word for word translation, will circulate among them boys immortal ones. But the problem, of course, this particular aleph, which is added in some sort of a Rasmic text, because in the early manuscripts we don't have the aleph in this wildan. So most probably we are dealing with just the feminine dual verb in that sense. Valdana would be begotten one, and in feminine, what is important. So in that sense, this participle, which is the clause for this verb, also feminine, because the verb is feminine. So this begotten ones and mukhalidun, it's literally translated as begotten, or excuse me, eternal ones. This eternal ones is feminine. So that's one way to translate it, if we are just simply skip the aleph. Another way to translate it as the adjective. This what is also called the sifa mushabbiha in the Arabic grammar. It's very weird because this adjective can also be like in English translation as a noun. Like, for example, Rahman. Rahman is a good example because it's the same form. So instead of a walada, which means to begot, like this root, particular root, and in Arabic and in other Semitic languages, except that in Hebrew, for example, it would be ya, not wa, yalada, means to begot. But Rahman, we have ra, ha, mim as the root base to express mercy, right? To be merciful. And this Rahman would simply be some merciful being in that case. And that's how we have this Bismillahi ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. But yeah, it's problematic because you can take it both as this kind of adjectival noun, or in case of the feminine dual as a verb. So, and Yutawafa translated as circulate, but overall, even in Aramaic and Hebrew, it's the prime meaning of this primitive root would be to flood over, to pour, usually taken, oftenly used with the waters. And yeah, it's even in the Quran in some passages, as far as I know. Let's check it out. It's used exactly with the same meaning of flooding something. So let's hit back. What was the link? 56. Just 1 second. Simply to confirm that I'm not making this stuff up. So here's this particular root word, which is used, occurs 41 times, and in one occasions you can see when it's used as a noun in the noun form. Tufana, it means exactly the flood, like it's in Syriac and in Hebrew. So it would be something matched to, like, in Arabic, to have like similar semantic in that sense. And in that case, it can denounce, if we do take it as the adjectival noun, that floods over them like this never-ending youth, in a sense that they don't have a problem with aging like the most common people do. That would be another sense of this passage, but I personally render it as that maybe there is some sort of a, if we do translate it as a feminine, and like to the native Arab eye, that would be like the primary meaning for that, because you won't usually see this adjectival nouns in the Quran. So maybe there's some reference to some deities in that sense. I don't know, but even how it's translated, it's very similar to the Christian concept of like eternally begotten Son. But I personally don't know, so don't ask me what the hell can it refer to. Yeah, and even if we do accept that there is an Aleph, like we agree with a classical rendition that originally there was the Aleph, even though there is no confirmation in the manuscripts. It wouldn't be boys, because well done is not the plural, it's the dual. It would be two boys. It's important because the plural of the boy would be awwalat, for the children, for example. Awwalat would be children, not the wildan. Wildan is the dual. And that's a skip. That's the mistranslation. You must translate it here, not the eternal youths, but eternal two youths. Yeah. بكواب وعباريك وكاس من معين. The next verse taken as some sort of a loan words from Persian in traditional translation. They often translate it as the cups, pitchers. This kawab would be standing for vessels, abarik for jugs. And to be honest, when I try to like do my best to compare it to what they proposed as the Persian alternative, it's so flawed. It's like it's not even closed lexically. And whilst you can simply take it as the native Arabic words, not the Persian ones, especially abarik. Abarik would be just the plural of burak, and burak mostly translated as some sort of a lightning, some swift thing, basically. And I think that's the Persian loan word, but not how the traditionally it would be understood. And Persian in a sense of loaning from Borak, from Persian Borak, and this Borak later on would appear in Zoroastrian literature with a famous tradition where like Zoroaster would write on this I don't know how to call it, flying donkey, this flying mythical creature to the heavens in like visionary experiences. And similar we have in the Muslim like more or less orthodox tradition of Isra wa Miraj, where Muhammad riding this flying creature getting to this layers of heavens which guarded by certain angelic beings. And but overall in the Quran it's used for the lightning. So I just like try to pull it up. So it was the previous. $56.17, like it's not that convenient when it comes to the finding the specific words. Yeah, as you can see, abarik, it's just simply taken as the loan words. You can see there's even no root, Arabic root attached to this. But when we actually take the root I mentioned, which is ba, ra, kaf, then it's primarily used for the lightning throughout the text, as you can see. So, yeah, in the dazzled vision, like you're being dazzled by this lightning, so you're blinded basically. And yeah, you can simply translate it as a lightning. In plural, it would be just intensive form of that. That there would be lightnings around this eternally begotten feminine one. And or maybe it's the reference for the leaders too, that they are this in radiance and light. Well, because they're wealthy people, and wealthy people tend to have a luxury lifestyle, and that may be the critique in that case. And waqas min ma'in, usually translated as springs, ma'in, but even in like in the Hebrew Bible, when this and this is actually translated correctly as far as I know as a cups. In Hebrew, kos means exactly the same thing, cups, but most of the time in Hebrew Bible, it's used figuratively, like the cup of anger or cup of passion. It's used to describe specific quality of the human being. And here you can translate as a cup of the certainty, definitely, because ayn is seeing, perceiving, like seeing how it is. That's why like ayn is used for the eyes, basically, throughout the Semitic languages. In Mandean Aramaic, actually, you can see that ayn is also used for the springs, and maybe this is the origins of the traditional understanding of this passage, that they take it as some sort of I don't know, magical waters from the springs of heaven, right? And here it's translated as a flowing stream, but interestingly, that like there's no this flowing word, but I don't know where they get this, where they did get this. But let's try then Islam Awakened, how they do translate this passage. First three one is like the most popular. Flowing stream, I don't know how on earth it's word for word, because it just simply states the cups of this specific spring. This particular word formation with this kas used with a min preposition, it just used not in a sense of from, which is the primary meaning of this min, but of. It's like cup of wine would be in Arabic like kas min hamar. It's very frequent even in the colloquial Arabic today. So I don't know where they get this flowing adjective, because it's not there in the text. But they take it as a stream like the Mandeans do, obviously in some Mandean texts. And maybe that's my suggestion. I'm not claiming anything like 100%. That's just some sort of a critique going on of these rulers, which I described, that they are having suppers, like they don't care about anyone, like they having the youthful ladies around them, even though I myself like usually you can take this some sort of an immortal, right? But you can also like this word is so problematic, this Khalidun, because there is a whole debate about the issue of the hell, eternality of hell in the Muslim theology, and obviously they're part of the which denies eternality, and they take this Khalidun as not some sort of eternal period, but some period of time, like big span of time, but not eternal in a sense of eternality, right? But other camp is stressing this fact, which most probably stems from this kind of Manichaean theology back in the day, which later on was adapted in the West Catholic tradition by Augustine, who was important to stressing this fact that hell is eternal. You can it's so problematic that you can translate it both ways. It's not eternally in the sense of as I take it as some sort of a venerated deities. Maybe we're talking about some female deities who are described here, but endless. Like they would have they are basically having this endless youthful ladies about them. Maybe there's some sort of a critique of luxury lifestyle of the rulers, who usually had a lot of wives within the household. But I don't know. And here is just the description of how they bright, they don't care about the future because future for them is certain. There's no uncertainty for the for the people who born out in the rich households. And here is often taken, as you can see, as some sort of a description of this stream that after having this kind of cups of this magical wine, they don't have headache and intoxication. But what's important that this particular word in other Semitic languages, this particular root, nazapa, in that's in Arabic would be nazafa. It doesn't stand for the intoxication at all. It's usually used to describe some sort of excommunication, religious excommunication, or some sort of a religious rebuttal from certain religious groups. And this is most probably just made up in order to facilitate specific meaning. Sada used primarily in the Quran to describe some sort of a cracking up, some process of cracking or dividing with a loud voice used for the earth in the Quran to describe this kind of apocalyptic event that earth will crack up. And well, you can take it as a headache, I guess, but it's some sort of a pain, like your head wouldn't crack up. Basically, it would be what they do imply, but it's debatable, to be honest, whether, at least for the second portion of the verse, that thing is meant to be here. But more literal one, and at least with the semantics which lined up with the Aramaic, which is the closest to Arabic among the Semitic languages, it wouldn't be intoxicated at all. I can't even imagine how you can derive it from the obviously some sort of a proto-root for both Aramaic and Arabic. And in that case, the literal translation would be not they are having any headache from it, nor they are being rebuked. What is important is ha. Ha is the feminine. So it can also refer to this eternally begotten ones, that they are not having any headache from these wives, basically. They are not being rebuked by anyone because, well, they are rich people. Rich people usually not rebuked by the clergy. And if we do translate it actually like the traditional one, there's a mistranslation oftenly. because here it's taken as a nor, but if it's the case, that particular preposition would be standing at the end of the verse. So it would be لا يصدون ولا ينزفون عنها, and they do not do that, or having that, nor they having that from it, but only this particular verb used for this preposition. You can't actually to predicate this verb to this preposition. It's just grammatically incorrect. It just this verb is basically separated from this one. I mean, it's connected with a wa, but it's not predicated to this preposition, basically. So the traditional translation is not correct to say like that will cause them neither headache nor intoxication. From it they will not have headache or intoxication. From it they will not have headache. That's correct. But other part is not. You can predicate it, basically. And next verse, وَفَقِيهَةِ مِمَا يُتَحَيِّرُونَ. Like, that's the most, I think, mistranslated, because there's the whole issue of the theology going on. Oftenly you will see this as something to choose, and there is a philosophical concept of ikhtiyar, or theological one, which propagated by the Ash'ari school, because they are determinists. They are believing in predestination. They're like, I don't know how to describe it, like Calvinists within Islam. They don't believe that humans possess any free will. And ikhtiyar in that sense would be some sort of a way to describe the wish of the person towards either sin or good. So what is often, as it's often translated, as an acquisition. And but this particular verb just stems from this root-based khair. Khair means to be good, to be gladden. Usually you can hear it like as some sort of a greetings in Arabic, sabatul khair, like good morning. And probably it is from Greek, where in Greek chaires is used in ancient Greek, at least for the greeting, like it's used in colloquial Arabic today. And that's just mistranslation. It's because how they do translate it, to choose this khair. No, it's to be glad and to have something good, basically, khair, and to rejoice in a sense. And that's just a bunch of theology read into the text, basically, what we are dealing with. Because it was important to defend the predeterminism in the 9th century theology. And this word is very dubious, translated as the fruits of paradise. But to be honest, you won't find anything like that in the Semitic languages, where this primal root, pakaha, is used for like some very unstable flow of water. It's actually used in the Hebrew Bible once, as far as I know, in order to describe the recklessness and unstableness of the water. For example, in Genesis. Yeah, and in the what we do find in the, for example, in the Syriac, it's exactly the same. And just for the convenience, I will just take the Syriac lexicon. They have the links, which is very important. In Syriac, it can also denounce the tasteless dullness, but I think that just stems from the primal primitive root of bubbling. So unstable water, in that sense, is the bubbling one, evaporating one. And usually in Syriac, you can also take it as becoming sober. Let's see in Hebrew. It would be like more convenient to use the Jastrow dictionary. Just a minute, because I don't have, unfortunately, the Hebrew keyboard with me, so I'm using this virtual one. As you can see, primarily it used to break, to ooze, to penetrate, to flow, to drop, and another form with a head. Just exactly the same thing, it's just the different pronunciation variation in that sense. To evaporate, the same, meaning to evaporate, to make sober, to become sober. So even if we do take it, well, you may say it might be consistent with a traditional translation, right? So they are not intoxicated, but they are becoming sober, right? They're not because this, like, it's also problematic to translate wa. There's another discussion, because wa can be used as the conjugational particle and, like in English, but also can be translated as yet or but, depending on the context, or even as a while. So following the traditional translation, if you follow like the dogma that this particular verb we must take as the Abbasid decided it, but connecting this particular root with a Hebrew, it makes sense, right? They will not have a headache, nor will have intoxication, but they will be sober. Wafakihati, mima yutaheiron, from what they do rejoice, from what they are rejoicing. Yutaheiron, it's just the present form of the verb in that sense. And yeah, but I think we can take it as some sort of a negative description, because it's consistent with other passages in the Quran where basically this word is used. Well, it's my assumption, obviously, that the Quranic text is consistent and internally consistent, and it is a sole narrative, right? That specific word occurring throughout the text used in similar way. But it may not be the case. I don't know. Maybe we are dealing with a compilation of the documents when we're talking about the Quran. Maybe in this particular surah, in this particular chapter, it's used in that sense, but in other passages, it's used differently because, well, it's just the script. It may describe some different development or stage of development of the language, of the Arabic language, maybe. Who knows? But I would just follow the assumption that some sort of a Quranic vocabulary is consistent, which is a big, I admit, it's a big leap of faith, but if you look into the other passages, yeah, it's quite evidently used as a negative description, and in that sense, we are dealing with not the fruits, but recklessness as it is in the Hebrew Bible. I think that they are reckless from which they are rejoicing, describing these rulers in that case. That's oftenly translated as flesh, some sort of a flesh meat of birds. Yeah, so there's some sort of a conjugation going on in the traditional translation. They will be served with the fruits they choose, mistranslated heavily, and the meat from birds they desire. Well, yeah, it's true that lahm can mean meat in the Arabic. It's more or less conventional, but to be honest, you would assume to have at least a definite article when it comes to this particular word combination, meat of birds. Lahmu altair. There would be article if we're talking about this kind of a connectivity between the two nouns going on, because it's usually the case. But we can take actually the slachama as simply as the verb, not as the noun, and that's the problematic of the irregular nouns in Arabic, right? Because oftenly the Rasmic text is kind of letter form. In that case, slachama can indicate the verb, but it can also indicate the noun. It's same, for example, with a kitab or kataba, meaning to write something, and kutub, the plural noun of the kitab, meaning the books. And what is problematic that it is the same Rasmic text. So it's not clear that we're dealing with some sort of a word formation here. It's most probably just a verb, the noun predicated with a verb, lahama, meaning to eat something. And birds will eat the flesh in that sense, because it's mostly speaking the primarily meaning which was adopted in Arabic because of the nomadic culture of the Arabs. And what is interesting that laham, for example, in Aramaic, the primary meaning would be bread, not the meat. But for example, in the Sakatri Arabic, and Sakatri is this island not far from the Yemen in the South Arabia, laham means fish. And why? Because there's not so much meat or some sedentary cultures on the island. The primary source for food would be fish. That's why this word adopted this meaning in this particular dialect of Arabic. But yeah, I just personally translated this way because what actually interesting that this sort of a ideogram or phraseology of birds eating the flesh from the wicked is the recurrent in the Bible, and even later on in New Testament tradition, right, with the Revelation. And as far as I know, there is even parallels to the Enochian one, and undeniably there is a Enochian stuff in the Quran, at least maybe rephrased, not exactly one for one, not like stealed from this borrowed somehow, maybe just adaptation, but definitely. Given the fact that this particular word is just mistranslated. Mima yeshtahun. from which they are desire, we often see as a translation, like they desired some sort of a meat in this heavenly, I don't know, suppery, and this heavenly voice will give them this meat. But Yashtahun used in the fifth form of this particular verb, which means the causative, which indicates the causative meaning, and in that sense, it would be more correct to translate it not just simply attracted to, but attracted to each other, as it's, for example, been the case with mutaqabilun, because it's exactly the same form or pattern of the verb formation we have. And the eat, and the birds will eat the flesh, and this is the famous hurun ain, and usually translated as some sort of illustrious maidens, like heavenly maidens with the gorgeous eyes. And yeah, that's quite problematic from my perspective. It's just I can't see it as a phraseology, because traditionalists will take it as a phrase, like hurul ain or hurun ain, literally translated as the bright eyes, bright not in the sense of whiteness, because there is actually Arabic word for the white, and it's not the hur, but to designate something bright in the sense of the clearness. And often it's also used for something transparent, something invisible. And that's actually how this ladies in some Hadithi tradition oftenly describe as being transparent ones or invisible. Yeah, transparent is a better indication, because you can see the bones of them or something like that. So very weird stuff going on with these beautiful ladies. But as you can see, even Christoph Luxemburg took it as this ain as the grapes, but not the case at all, because even in Syriac, the primary meaning, as in Arabic, would be the eyes, no, not the grapes. Hur, in that sense, would be like this kind of transparent white grapes, like specific sort of the grape tree we have. And yeah, but it's not that clear at all. But I think what Quran stated here, that there's this concept of invisible eyes, which are basically looking on you every time you walk, every time you do any of your usual things, usual actions. And that's actually why in the next verse there is a comparison to the hidden pearls, that these eye are not visible ones, they are hidden like the pearls. And this maknoon would later on appear in this particular surah to describe the kitabul maknoon, this invisible divine scripture, kitabul maknoon, a heavenly scripture, like some sort of akashic records, which have in it all the actions humanity did throughout the whole human history. Basically, from it there is gonna be a judgment of the sinners, because you can deny what you did because it's already written in this, I don't know, heavenly book, right? And what is stated there, that they are reckless from which they are rejoicing. This mima can be translated from which, usually even in colloquial Arabic it's translated as thus, yet they are being reckless, thus they are rejoicing. And very rarely in Arabic you would see that this word would be translated from which or from what, even though it's literal translation, but it's more like some sort of phraseology going on, which is not at all uncommon in Arabic, where different particles combine together, giving the absolutely different meaning. Because this particular particle usually taken as a combination of the min plus, meaning the particle min, plus the particle ma. But yeah, it's, and from which they are rejoicing, meaning this particular, I don't know, youth or every possible pleasures of life they have, the birds will eat. And that's why this mima recur second time to indicate that we are dealing with a similar concept in that sense. And the invisible eyes, which are like the pearls hidden, jaza bima kanu ya'malun. And very oftenly in the Quran, this phrase is used to describe the punishment for the sinners, that they will be recompensed for what they used to do in the earthly life. And I think that's exactly the case for what the Quran trying to tell us, or authors of the Quran try to tell us here, that like you are having this luxury lifestyles, you are wicked rulers, basically having this, some sort of a supper, facing each other. There is like eternal youth around you. You are not, the future of yours is not uncertain, as it's uncertain for the poor people who are struggling, right? You don't have any headache in your life. You're not being rebuked, and you're reckless from what you are rejoicing. You're being reckless because of that. But the birds of the heaven, basically, that's most probably the reference of this kind of birds of heavens, which occurs in Revelation, for example. They will eat from what you were rejoicing. And invisible eyes, and you can take it as maybe some sort of a description, who knows, of the heavenly beings. And we know that in the Hebrew Bible, these angels are not, I mean, it's not that one way, I guess. There's anthropomorphic angels, but definitely non-anthropomorphic forms of angels, which were like recently popularized as like non, or how is it, biblically accurate angels, having like this kind of weird wings around them, eyes everywhere. Maybe it's reference to this particular beings, that they are playing the role of the judges when this day of judgment will happen. Excuse me. And but generally, you can even take it as the eye of the person itself. That so overall in Zoroastrianism and later on in Islam, it would be important to stress the fact that parts of your body during the day of judgment will testify against you. So there is a famous verse in the Quran that your skin will testify against you. Maybe that's meaning implied that your eyes, your own eyes, which is not visible to you, that you wouldn't even imagine that your own eyes later on will testify of what you did during your life. But in classical translation, as you can see, they just take it as the heavenly maidens. In that case, the best, I would say, the best defense of this position would be comparing it to the Manichaean tradition, where we have the Dianas, right, some sort of a divine compartment, psychopompic divinities of the afterlife, which led you through the Chinvad bridge, right, which in Quran stated as the Sirat. And but yeah, overall, like, it just doesn't make any sense. Why would you compare the heavenly maidens with a pristine? And that's an accurate translation, to be honest. This Maknoon is not pristine anyhow. Maknoon is just hidden one. Like, it's so deceitful. Like, they understand the problem. Like, why on earth would you compare the heavenly ladies as some sort of heavenly wives of yours with the pearls? What the hell is going on with the hidden pearls, right? If we do literally translate that, they understand that no, hidden is not the right way to translate it. We need to translate it as the pristine in order to make this comparison with the beautiful pearls. But that's not the primary meaning of the Maknoon, and that's the problem. And yeah, and this taken as a reward, and yeah, that's actually the case, that this particular word, which is jaza, and we can, as far as now, we can click and even hear, right? Jazaan. This jazaan, taken as a reward. It's one of the Persian loanwords, actually, because in Middle Persian, jazidki was used for the actual taxing system, which is interesting because jizya, later on, this kind of a tax on non-Muslims, stems from the same root form, which may indicate that Islam is not so, like, was, at least in early inception, so different from the how Sassanids, how the Sasanian rulership used to govern their own provinces, right? Yeah, so in my translation, I do translate it, all this part, not as the description of some sort of a heavenly pleasures of the third type of people, Sabikun, but it's just general description of the rulers and the critique of the rulers. I think that's something unusual. You won't find it in any translation. But like, I tried my best to reconcile, to be honest, this Hurul Ain with the Manichaeanism, like with this Manichaean concept. It's not there. Like, it's not, especially given the fact that this Hurul Ain, as we can see, and let's check in the Quran corpus, is used with some weird adjectives attached to it. Especially this one, maksuratun, because often this maksurat translated as a pavilions, but literally, like, literal translation would be the one residing in the castle. And as you can, I will try to see, like, do they actually derive it? Kasara. Yeah, as you can see, palaces, castle. So it's the root form to indicate, and most probably it's not originally was the verb form, which later on produced the noun. It's very often in Arabic, when Arabic adopts some noun, foreign noun, it transforms the noun into the verb, so it's vice versa. It's not like in Semitic languages when you have like this verbal root from which stems the different parts of speech, whether it's like nouns, participles. But when it's come to the some sort of loan words, the Arabic do magical stuff with it. Like it adopts the noun, but you can derive the verb from the noun. So the kasara would be basically being restrained, restricted. Someone kept in the castle, basically, in a literal sense. Yeah, and that's quite interesting because I don't know, maybe you know it, but not. But there was a whole tradition in the Judaism called the Hekkalot tradition, or the Hekkalot literature, as it's often called, the castle literature, which describing this some sort of visionary experiences which this Old Testament prophets had, and oftenly this flying angels with the eyed ones, right? Multiple eyed, or many eyed ones, as they translated, they oftenly accompanied with the castles. So I don't know, maybe there what is meant here is that these entities, because otherwise just simply well, doesn't make any sense, to be honest, because even if you take it literally in this particular verse, it's not Hurun Ein, which describes just Hur, right? It's the adjective, it's the first adjective, exactly like it's used here, the bright ones. So it's another leap of faith from my perspective to take it as a reference to this. Like, why not just simply state it here? Hurun Ein Muqassiratun. Why skipping the word, the whole word? Well, you can say for the purpose of the rhythm, but that's another questionable topic. Where is the the debate about this rhythmic nature of the Quran? And there is the famous book of the Günther Lüling, who is like sort of a mythicist in the, like, I don't know, Islamic studies. Like, you have some sort of a Jesus mythicist, but he's a Muhammad mythicist. He doesn't believe that Muhammad existed at all as the historical person. And he has a book called Call for Reformation for Islam, where he proposed the idea that many passages in the Quran, they are not rhythmic in nature. This rhythm was a later phenomenon, like maybe 9th or 10th century one, in order to basically change the meaning or impose specific theological meaning to the some Quranic phraseology, and basically detach this some sort of a Christian origin, because Lüling believes that Islam originated as some sort of a Arabic weird form of Arabic Christianity, right? But still Christianity. Jesus will play important role, or in that case, the Mashiach figure, right? Jesus, Masih ibn Maryam, or Isa ibn Masih ibn Maryam. So So that's just like so much leaps of faith you need to do in order to impose the specific meaning for these beautiful maidens, I guess. But yeah, like how much already? It's already an hour. God, for God's sake, we may wrap this up, but continue later on, I guess, because yeah, if there is the like, how can I end up this? Oh, see.
Sure. So yeah, maybe we'll leave it there.
Yeah,
I'm thinking.
continue like, so you can discuss it lengthy, especially you need to pull up the different sources. It's not that easy and simple, especially when it comes to the excuse me, just interfering, I guess, especially when it comes to this whole idea that Quran borrowing from Syriac. I mean, I wouldn't be so hesitant to say that it's a pseudoscience. Definitely there is gonna be some sort of a similar semantic. It's like, I don't know, English and German, right? Definitely would have some words which phonetically similar and etymologically similar at the same time, because they're just stemming from the same proto-root, proto-base for the both of these words. But yeah, but to say that it's just a straight Syriac, like it's just big misinterpretation even of the Christoph Luxemburg. It doesn't actually state that. It just state that there are similarities, but to say just the Syriac Christian text, like, are you insane? Like, it's so, I wouldn't say like it's so ignorant. It's just dumb, because Arabic grammar is different from the Syriac one, even though the Luxemburg attempted to show that some prepositions, some grammatical formations we have in Arabic, they may be stemming from Syriac. But to say that everything is from Syriac, it's just dumb. It's just incorrect. That's why, like many linguists, they would just simply like, they would just would not even listen to that nonsense. So it's nonsensical. But yeah, you just need to be more modest in that approach, in a sense of that sometimes this kind of misinterpretations we have in Arabic is just simply mistranslation of Arabic, as we see in, like, with this maknoon. It's deceitful, misleading translation. When you translate these pearls as the beautiful, pristine pearls, it's not the literal meaning. And obviously why they wanted to facilitate that. See, otherwise the comparisons doesn't make any sense. Why would you compare the beautiful women with a hidden pearl? What the hell are you on about? But if you do compare it with a beautiful pearl, like, oh, she's like a jewel, right? It makes sense, and you can change whatever you want through that. So you need to be aware of this part. And I think like the most of the mistranslation of the Quran, like 80%, would be about that. When there's a specific theology is like inserted like forcefully into the text, and 20% when it comes to the loan words, when it just simply occurs once. And yeah, it's just a guess game in many occasions. I think that you won't even find anything, unfortunately, except like the classical one. Even the classical interpretation is just as it is interpretation. You just agree with a specific convention which was established during the like 9th century. We don't have anything from the 7th century, sadly. That's on the transmitters, right? And that's why so many people now becoming this Quranists, Quran only, throughout the whole Middle East. Like it's like the, how would say, the Protestantism within the Islam, right? Sola Scriptura. Because otherwise the question naturally will arise, like, why the hell there's nothing like in the 7th century? Hello? Why there no single, I don't know, lexiconary from the 7th century? Whilst we have dozen Aramaic, like Syriac lexiconaries, and like it was already established literature. Why there's no any hadith in the 7th century? Because at least through the hadith you can derive the specific meanings, at least as how it used specific word in the hadith in the sentences. You can possibly derive the meaning from it. Why there's nothing like that? And sadly, no definite answer to that, I guess. And I'm afraid there will be no answer to that from the orthodoxy. As for example, we have the same situation with the whole Marcion problem in the Christianity. Like no answer, just straight, like you're like in ignore list. Let's not talk about that, okay? That's very problematic. Let's just simply skip that and ignore that. Well, that's the weak response, I would guess. Like, it's very weak.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if there is any questions, I would. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not
Can
seeing any
ask.
questions here. But yeah, so maybe we'll leave it there, and we'll
Yeah.
say we'll finish it up next week then.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much. Very interesting.
Thank
And
you
yeah,
for
and thank
having me
everybody
again.
for watching, and have a great rest of the day.
Bye.